We feel you're not aligned with our brand's future vision, Julia said, her tone rehearsed, polished. The words hung in the air of the sterile conference room. I stared at the white folder placed before me, severance package, NDA, release form, all wrapped in corporate efficiency, all very final. My hands gripped the edge of the table. Not even an hour ago, I'd been sitting in a vision workshop where a consultant cheerfully divided behaviors into aligned and misaligned columns. I'd watched as they systematically categorized everything I stood for as obsolete. Jake, Damon, leaned forward, Chief People Officer mask firmly in place. We really value your contributions over the years. 5 years of my life, countless nights, missed weddings. My brother's Navy promotion ceremony, sacrificed for quarterly reports that turned Echelon's KPIs from red to green. This is effective immediately, I managed, voice steadier than it had any right to be. Julia nodded, already glancing at her watch. The transition team will help with your office. Your access credentials have been already deactivated, I finished. For her. Of course they had. The executive alignment retreat. The careful way they'd booked my flight. The polite nods from junior execs on the shuttle from O'Hare. It all made sickening sense now. They hadn't brought me here for alignment. They'd brought me here for execution. You built an incredible foundation, Julia continued, not meeting my eyes. Foundation. The word sliced through me. I'd built more than a foundation. When I walked through Echelon's doors 5 years ago, their operations were a nightmare. Marketing didn't speak to product. Supply chain operated like a separate company. Middle management was collapsing. I fixed it, all of it, not with flashy presentations but with real work. Connecting people, building bridges, creating systems that actually functioned. Take some time to review the package, Damon said, sliding a pen toward me. We're prepared to be generous. Generous. My jaw clenched so tight I could hear teeth grinding. Thank you for the opportunity, I said, rising mechanically. Tucking the folder under my arm, I shook their hands. Firm, professional, as if they'd just offered me a promotion instead of gutting my career. In the elevator, alone, I finally breathed. Deep, ragged inhales that threatened to tear my lungs apart. They thought this was the end of my story at Echelon. They had no idea it was just the beginning. The hotel minibar scotch burned going down, a sharp contrast to the dull ache spreading through my chest. Outside my window, Chicago continued its evening pulse. Headlights, skyscrapers, life moving forward while mine had just been thrown into reverse. 5 years earlier, I'd walked through Echelon's glass doors with nothing but a reputation for fixing broken systems and a stubborn refusal to cut corners. The company was impressive from the outside. Sleek marketing, bold press releases, aggressive growth targets. Inside it was organizational chaos. My first week I sat in 14 different departmental meetings where teams could barely articulate what other divisions actually did. Marketing created campaigns, product couldn't deliver, sales promised timelines, operations couldn't meet. Every department had its own tracking systems, incompatible with everyone else's. I didn't start with grand reorganizations or flashy initiatives. I started with coffee, Tuesdays with warehouse supervisors who'd never seen the executive floor, Thursdays with customer service team leads, drowning in escalation tickets no one had trained them to handle, early mornings with accounts receivable, specialists who knew exactly where money was being lost but had never been asked. I built relationships first. Trust came next. Systems followed. Within 6 months, cross-functional teams were collaborating without my prompting. KPIs started shifting. Quiet, measurable progress that didn't need spotlight announcements. Brian Keller, our VP of Operations, noticed. "You're doing good work, Jake," he told me after a quarterly meeting. "Quiet work. The kind that actually sticks. Keep your head down and there's a future here for you." Those words changed everything for me. Echelon wasn't just another corporate stepping stone. It became home. My mission. The next 4 years blurred together. Countless 2 a.m. emails, weekend strategy sessions, celebrations of milestones only operational people could appreciate. My relationship with Elise ended when she finally gave up competing with spreadsheets and process maps. "You're married to that company," she said the night she moved out. I missed my nephew's birth because we were rolling out a new inventory management system across 3 time zones. Called my mother on her birthday from a supply chain emergency in Detroit. Watched friends' vacation photos while I ordered sad room service in anonymous business hotels. Every sacrifice seemed worth it when I saw the results. Operational margin improved 13% year-over-year. Customer retention rates up nearly 18%. New client onboarding time cut in half. Problems solved. Processes streamlined. A company transformed from the inside out. When Echelon launched Elevate, their new flagship service, I was the invisible engine making it possible. While marketing crafted the perfect launch party and executives practiced sound bites for the press, I rebuilt entire operational systems from the ground up, restructured support tiers, created escalation paths, installed quality control checkpoints. Then, Julia Barnes arrived as Chief Marketing Officer, freshly poached from some consumer brand, known for viral stunts and disruptive campaigns. Julia saw Echelon as a tech-forward brand for the young and restless. Our actual clients were insurance firms, regional banks, manufacturing suppliers, established enterprises that valued reliability over flash. Julia didn't care. She pushed for influencer partnerships and lifestyle campaigns. Most landed with painful thuds among our client base. Internally, it created division, old guard versus new visionaries. I stayed focused on operations, let results speak. But then I noticed something disturbing. Key people on my teams were being approached by recruiters. Tracing the offers back, they all connected to firms where Julia's former colleagues had influence. Not coincidence. Systematic undermining. When Brian Keller announced his retirement, I lost my strongest ally in leadership. The writing was on the wall, but I kept believing results would protect me. 17 quarters of operational improvement. Client retention highest in company history. None of it mattered. The following morning I didn't catch my scheduled flight back home. Instead, I checked out of the corporate booked hotel and moved to a smaller boutique place across town. No Echelon, affiliations, cash payment, privacy. In my new room, I spread out my materials on the small desk by the window. Not the severance papers, those remained folded in my briefcase, untouched. Instead, I opened my personal laptop to files I'd been quietly cultivating for months. Ever since Julia's arrival, I'd sensed seismic shifts coming. Corporate instinct, perhaps, or simply pattern recognition after 15 years in business. Whatever the reason, I'd prepared. Not with anything that would violate legal boundaries or ethics, but with something equally powerful: knowledge. On my screen, meticulous maps of Echelon's true organizational structure. Not the official hierarchy in HR documents, but the real one, who actually made things happen, whose approval really mattered, which relationships kept departments functioning. Next tab, skill inventories of key personnel. The unsung heroes whose names never appeared in press releases, but whose talents kept the company's heart beating. Third tab, what I called frustration heat maps. Casual comments from team lunches, offhand remarks during happy hours, signs of dissatisfaction carefully noted and categorized by department, by severity, by potential impact. Last tab, client relationship assessment. Which accounts were stable versus vulnerable? Which clients were impressed by flash versus substance? Which ones had expressed concerns about Echelon's new direction in ways too subtle for the sales teams to notice? My phone buzzed. Maggie Rhodes, Senior Product Ops Manager. Her text was brief. Heard what happened, they're lost, call when you're ready. I set the phone down without replying. Not yet. Reactions now would be driven by emotion. I needed clarity first. The room grew darker as afternoon faded into evening. I ordered room service, worked through dinner. By midnight, the outlines of a plan had formed, not a revenge plot, but something more elegant, a realignment of my own. I slept for 6 hours, woke at dawn, went for a 5-mile run along the lakefront, letting Chicago's morning air clear my mind. By the time I returned to my room, showered and dressed in clothes I'd purchased the previous day, my decision was made. My first call wasn't to Maggie or any other Echelon employee. It was to Martin Reeves, an attorney specializing in employment, law and business formation. A 30-minute conversation confirmed what I'd suspected. Echelon's non-compete clauses were largely unenforceable under current state statutes. My second call was to a commercial real estate agent about small office space options, month-to-month terms, minimal commitment. My third call was to a digital services firm about registering a shell company, Delaware Incorporation, anonymous domain registration, clean banking connections. By lunchtime, I had the framework for a new entity, not a direct competitor to Echelon. That would be both obvious and limiting. Instead, something adjacent but distinct. Focused on the operational excellence Echelon was systematically dismantling. Late afternoon, I finally texted Maggie back. "Coffee tomorrow early." Her response came instantly. "Name the place." That night I worked on a minimalist website design. Clean, professional, no flashy promises, just clear articulation of operational value. Each word chosen precisely to speak to the pain points I knew existed among Echelon's client base. I didn't feel anger anymore, no bitterness, not even disappointment, only focus. Echelon had made their choice 6 months ago when they decided operations could be sacrificed for optics, when they confused marketing with substance, when they mistook my quiet competence for dispensability. Now I would make mine. The first meeting with Maggie Rhodes took place at 6:30 a.m. in a small coffee shop, 15 blocks from Echelon's headquarters. Early enough that we wouldn't encounter other employees, but not so early as to appear suspicious. Maggie arrived precisely on time, dressed in her usual crisp blazer and minimal makeup. Her expression betrayed nothing as she sat across from me, placing her phone face down on the table, a small but significant gesture of discretion. "So," she said, stirring her coffee. "They really did it." I nodded once. No need to rehearse the details. "Their new direction requires new alignment," I said, echoing Julia's sanitized language without emotion. Maggie's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "And what's your new direction?" I took a deliberate sip of coffee before answering. "I'm exploring opportunities." I slid a small paper across the table. Not a business card or proposal, just a web address handwritten on hotel stationery. "Hypothetically," I said quietly, "what would you build if you could start fresh? No legacy systems, no political compromises." She didn't look at the paper immediately. "Hypothetically?" "Of course." Maggie finally glanced down, memorizing the address before returning the paper. "I'd build what our clients actually need instead of what makes for good press releases." "Would you do it alone?" Her eyes narrowed slightly. "I'd want the right people." "A small team, no dead weight." I nodded. "Who would be on that team?" Without hesitation, she listed 5 names, the same 5 at the top of my own mental list: the architects, the problem solvers, the people whose value Julia and her consultants had systematically underestimated. By the time we finished our coffee, nothing explicit had been promised. No formal offers extended. But Maggie understood. She would make certain calls, have certain conversations, plant certain seeds. 3 days later, I met Tom Kendrick, head of back-end engineering, at a dive bar far from the corporate district. Unlike Maggie's surgical precision, Tom brought passionate frustration. "They're gutting everything we built," he said, voice low despite the bar's ambient noise. "Bringing in consultants who can't even explain our API structure, but somehow they're optimizing our technical ecosystem." I listened, letting him vent. When he finally paused, I asked, "What would you do differently?" His eyes lit up. For 40 minutes, he outlined a technical architecture that would make operations seamless across platforms. Scalable, efficient, built for actual use rather than impressive demos. Similar meetings followed. Sarah Whitmore, customer retention strategist. Dev Patel, integration specialist. Each conversation carefully structured to seem casual while gathering critical intelligence. Meanwhile, the infrastructure for ArcSpire solutions took shape in the background. Office space secured with month-to-month flexibility. Legal framework established. Banking relationships initiated. Website developed but not yet launched. Every step deliberately small. Unnoticeable individually. Significant in aggregate. 2 weeks after my termination, Echelon announced an organizational restructuring to align with strategic priorities. Translation: panic was setting in as they realized certain operational knowledge had walked out the door with me. I monitored developments through careful channels, LinkedIn updates, industry forum chatter, occasional texts from former colleagues. The picture emerged clearly. Julia's vision was colliding with operational reality. Deadlines slipped, Client complaints increased. Internal confusion spread. 1 month post-termination, I executed the next phase. A simple text to Maggie, decision time. Her resignation letter went to Echelon HR the following morning. Standard 2-week notice, polite language about pursuing other opportunities. Nothing that would trigger legal concerns. Tom followed 3 days later. Sarah the week after that. Each departure surgical in timing and messaging, each creating small tremors within Echelon's structure. Julia and Damon scrambled to contain the damage. Exit interviews emphasized exciting transitions and refreshed perspectives. Town halls reassured remaining staff about evolving for future growth, but reality told a different story. Projects stalled. Client onboarding backlogs grew. The seamless processes I'd built became increasingly fragmented as institutional knowledge walked out the door in carefully timed departures. 6 weeks after my termination meeting in Chicago, ArcSpire Solutions was functional, not just as a concept or a website, but as an operational entity. We hadn't yet approached a single client directly. We didn't need to. The ecosystem was already shifting. Echelon's service quality was visibly declining. Client frustrations were mounting. Industry forums buzzed with questions about leadership changes and missed deliverables. The trap was set, the pieces positioned. All we needed now was the catalyst. It came in the form of an email from Westbrook Manufacturing, one of Echelon's largest enterprise clients. Third request for resolution on implementation timeline slippage. If no satisfactory response by Friday, we will be forced to explore alternative providers. Sarah forwarded it to me with a single question mark. I replied with a single word. Ready? Fizz. Corporate collapse. Everything unraveled faster than even I had anticipated. The first domino fell when Westbrook Manufacturing's CIO, frustrated after weeks of inadequate responses from Echelon, reached out directly to Sarah. Not officially, just a text message between former colleagues asking if she knew anyone who could actually deliver what was promised. Sarah waited exactly 12 hours before responding. Professional courtesy. I might have some recommendations. Coffee? That meeting resulted in nothing official. No contracts, no proposals. Just a hypothetical discussion about operational requirements and implementation challenges, and one business card passed across the table with ArcSpire's minimal logo. 3 days later, Westbrook's legal team sent Echelon formal notice. Service-level requirements weren't being met, constituting potential breach of contract. They demanded executive-level intervention within 48 hours. Inside Echelon, panic erupted. Julia convened emergency leadership meetings. Damon drafted desperate reassurance emails to key clients. The CEO, largely hands-off during the visionary transformation, suddenly demanded hourly updates on client retention strategies. None of it mattered. The systems were already failing, not because of sabotage, we had done nothing illegal or unethical, but because the people who understood how those systems actually functioned were gone. Documentation couldn't replace experience. Flowcharts couldn't substitute for relationships. Alignment consultants couldn't replicate years of operational knowledge. On a rainy Tuesday morning, Westbrook officially terminated their contract with Echelon, citing irreparable breakdown in service delivery. By Wednesday afternoon, they had signed with ArcSpire Solutions. Not because of corporate espionage or client poaching, because we could actually deliver what they needed. The market noticed. Industry forums lit up with speculation. LinkedIn buzzed, with thinly veiled references to Echelon's challenges. 3 trade publications ran stories about operational disruption in enterprise service providers. Inside Echelon, the facade cracked further. Middle managers, already stretched thin covering gaps left by departed specialists, began fighting over dwindling resources. Julia's marketing initiatives, once trumpeted as transformational, were quietly postponed as budget priorities shifted to client retention efforts. Emergency board meetings were called. Consultants were fired, then different consultants hired. Strategic pivots were announced, then reversed days later. Throughout it all, we at ArcSpire maintained radio silence. No press releases gloating about Westbrook's switch, no LinkedIn posts celebrating Echelon's struggles, no recruitment campaigns targeting their remaining talent. We didn't need to. Reality was doing our marketing for us. 2 weeks after Westbrook's departure, 2 more enterprise clients followed. Not because we pursued them, we hadn't made a single cold call. They came to us referred by Westbrook executives impressed with our implementation speed and operational clarity. By month's end, Echelon's stock had dropped 17%. Analyst calls focused on operational execution concerns rather than visionary rebranding initiatives. The watershed moment came when Damon Briggs, the same chief people officer who had slid my termination papers across the table in Chicago, called me directly. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Professional courtesy. "Jake," he said, voice tight with forced casualness. "We should catch up, clear the air." I said nothing, letting silence fill the line. "There might be opportunities to collaborate," he continued. "Consulting arrangements, maybe even leadership roles. The board recognizes your unique insights into our operational framework. Translation, we're drowning and need the person we threw overboard to save us." "I appreciate the call, Damon," I said evenly, "but I'm building something now." "We could make it worth your while," he pressed, voice dropping to that practiced tone he used in crucial negotiations. "I'm sure you could," I replied. "But why would I tie myself to something falling apart?" That same afternoon, Echelon announced an executive transition period, effective immediately. Julia Barnes would be pursuing other opportunities. The press release thanked her for her visionary contributions, without specifying any actual achievements. Internal emails leaked to industry blogs revealed the truth. Julia had been terminated in an emergency board action. Her severance package, while generous, came with extensive non-disclosure agreements and reputation management clauses. The following week, Damon followed her out the door. By then, Arcspire had signed 5 major clients, all former Echelon customers. Our team had grown to 27 people, all carefully selected for both technical excellence and collaborative mindset. Our systems were proving themselves daily through actual performance rather than marketing promises. The collapse wasn't just about Echelon's stock price or leadership failures. It was about something more fundamental: the difference between appearance and substance, between marketing promises and operational reality, between valuing perception over performance. They had made their choice. We had made ours. And the market had rendered its verdict. 1 year after that sterile conference room in Chicago, I sat in Arcspire's new headquarters, still modest by industry standards, but functionally elegant. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Open workspaces hummed with focused activity. No inspirational quotes on walls, no forced culture initiatives, just people building systems that worked. In my hand, the latest industry analysis report, with Arcspire featured prominently in the market leaders quadrant. Not because we had the flashiest marketing or the most provocative CEO statements, because we delivered. Our client roster had grown to 27 enterprise partnerships, 13 of them former Echelon clients. Our team now numbered 42 professionals, all selected for both technical excellence and collaborative mindset. Our reputation in the industry wasn't built on press releases or influencer campaigns, but on consistent execution and operational transparency. A knock at my door pulled me from my thoughts. Tom Kendrick stood in the doorway, tablet in hand. "Final numbers for Q3, he said, placing the device on my desk. The figures spoke for themselves. 157% of projected revenue targets. Client retention at 98.7%. Implementation timelines averaging 22% below industry standard. "Good work," I said simply. Tom nodded, started to leave, then paused. "Almost forgot. Who's representing us at the Enterprise Solutions Conference next month?" I hesitated. Public appearances had never been my strength. Under normal circumstances, I'd send Sarah or Maggie, both more comfortable in spotlight roles. "I'll handle it," I said finally. The conference came quickly. Standard industry affair, branded lanyards, mediocre coffee, forced networking in overcrowded exhibition halls. Arcspire's booth was minimal but professional, focused on demonstration rather than spectacle. I was reviewing a client implementation timeline when I felt someone watching me. Looking up, I saw Julia Barnes standing 10 feet away, clutching a portfolio and a conference program. She looked different. Still polished, yes. Still carrying herself with practiced confidence. But something had changed. The brittle edge of corporate invulnerability had faded, Our eyes met. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she approached, professional smile firmly in place. "Jake," she said, extending her hand. "It's been a while." I shook it briefly. "Julia, consulting now?" She nodded. "Strategic transformation for emerging enterprises." Translation: helping smaller companies with their branding after failing at the enterprise level. An awkward silence followed. Around us, the conference continued its noisy commerce. Pitches and demonstrations, business cards and branded stress balls. "Arcspire is doing well," she said finally. "Impressive growth curve." "We focus on what works," I replied. She studied me for a moment. "If things had been different," she began, then stopped herself. "I mean, if we had understood what you were actually building at Echelon, I could have said many things then. Could have reminded her of that sterile conference room, that white folder, those rehearsed platitudes about alignment and vision. Could have pointed out how thoroughly the market had validated my approach over hers. Instead, I simply said, "It worked out for the best." She nodded slowly, understanding the gentle dismissal. "Well, good luck, Jake." "You too, Julia." As she walked away, I felt no triumph, no vindication, just quiet recognition of a chapter closed. Later that evening, alone in my hotel room, I looked out over the city lights and reflected on the journey. Not just the corporate drama or the professional vindication, but the deeper lessons. They had thought they were removing a problem when they terminated me. What they actually did was remove the constraints that had limited my vision. They had thought they were protecting their future. What they actually did was free me to build something better. My phone buzzed, a text from Maggie. "Team dinner downstairs in 20. I smiled, sent a quick confirmation. Set down the phone, because that's what we do at Arcspire. We build not brands or perceptions or marketing narratives, systems that work, solutions that deliver, value that lasts.